Without further ado, I'll give the floor to Ayana Leeds.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, fellow grantees and Mary Pence staff. Thank you so much. And also particularly Grace for inviting me today in this panel. And my name is Ebin Abdullah. I'm the Education and Development Director of Ayada Leeds. And today I want to share with you who we are, what we do, and where we're going to go in the future. And I want to just give you a little bit in statistics data about volunteers and how actually volunteers helped our organization. And I want to share my PowerPoint. And our organization, its name is Ayada Leeds. And in 2020, we changed our previous name used to be Women Organizing Women Network. And the reason we choose Ayada Leeds is because in the community we serve, we are from Somalia. And I don't know if most of you knows in the highest number of Somali community and refugees and immigrants live in the state of Minnesota in Western Hemisphere, whether it's in Canada or in Europe. And that's why we wanted to be true to ourselves and the community that we serve. And that's why Ayada is a Somali word that means she leads. And we changed our name in 2020. Yeah, we are in a nonprofit organization, 501c3. And our mission is in Ayada Leeds is to encourage new Americans and particularly African diaspora women that live in our states to help them and to be part of the political and atmosphere in this state and also to be a leader in their own community. I want to share with you the reason I want to start our background is back in 2013, in our executive director, Dr. Habon Abdullah, she applied in Bush Fellow, and she wanted to help Somali women to be part of the political and landscape here in the state of Minnesota. And she won that leadership, and she started a group of women of 25. And I was one of those 25 people that she recruited, and she wanted to be part of one of us if they want to run for the office, if they want to be part of the school board, or if they want to be in just leadership. And the people that she attracted that time in 25 people was in well-known people that now is in Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and State Representative Hodan Hassan that now is in our state of Minnesota. And that time it took us almost 2 years. We were in formal groups. We used to call ourselves Advancing Women's Voices. And many grantees, and they came to us and they said, the work you're doing, we like it. Why you don't become an organization? And that in 2015, we became a nonprofit organization. And our name that time, as I said previously, was in Women Organizing Women. And most of our staff, as you can see, the picture is myself and our executive director, and we have a lot of volunteers that works in our organization. And that's why I want to today in my presentation emphasize how important it is volunteers in our organization. We have 3 initiatives. The first one is, and we have future leaders in the making. In these pictures, you see one of our past cohorts. We teach them, these young women, and to be leadership, communication. We have entrepreneurship, we have financial and literacy classes, and we have usually 3 cohorts every year. Also, we have all the mature women that has a language gap barrier in our communities, but also teach them what is civic engagement, how in the city councils and works, how the mayors work in our cities, and how they can, if they want to advocate for themselves, to know in the issues that they are actually encountering every single day, how they have that knowledge and they can also advocate for themselves. And the lastly is a campaign and also help them women to run for office. I just want to give you a little bit of quick background. And the reason we started our organization was a representation mattered to us. And this statistic was in 2013 when we were advancing women voices. This statistic in 7%, 33% in women in Minnesota, there's only legislators. And we are talking general women, not only PIPAC groups. And there was only 4 women of color in the state of representatives, whether it's the Senate or also lower house. And also in the next one is a national 38 women only serve in the US Congress. And that numbers now change. And the reason is change is organization like you and like us that actually did the work. And that numbers in most of you that live in our states know that is literally changing. One of my favorite quotes is that Marian Wright Ellman that says, how can I be what I can see? This and young women, and there's more but I took only these 4 people that actually were part of our organization in some time and somehow in their lives, that's actually expanded and opened more people to run for office. When Representative Omar ran in 2015, and she was actually one of our policy director in that time, we not only didn't change here in Minnesota and in the United States, but we changed also in Europe. And a lot of young people in diasporas, in African diasporas, they started running for it. And Representative Hassan, that time, she participated only 1 year in our program when we were as a group. But she reached and she became a state representative after that. And that's what we want to change. And the epitome in our organization is how young people that in our states see themselves and they want to be who they want to be in political leadership. And I mentioned earlier in volunteers, when it comes in volunteers, and we couldn't be an organization without volunteers. We are only 4 people, staff members in Ayada Leads. Since 2015, we became a nonprofit organization. The reason the work we are doing is based on volunteers. And I want to just give you this data and statistics that I found out in 2018. And it says that in volunteers, most of the time, they will help you in fundraising. They will help you in food distribution. We will help you 27% in manufacture, mentorship, and all the volunteers that are in our programs. Some of them, they are short-term. Some of them, they are with us almost 3 or 4 years, and they do a lot of mentoring in our programs. And if you guessed it, that in most of those volunteers in national, not only in the state of Minnesota, they are women. 34%, as you can see, these numbers, they are women. And only in 26.7% are men. And that's why we are actually lean on and actually focus more women to volunteers in our programs. And as you guessed it, and we are lucky to live in the state of Minnesota. In the United States, and only Utah is number 1 when it comes volunteering. Minnesota is the second, and it's only 45.1% that is volunteer numbers. Second, and the third and the fourth is Iowa, Alaska, and Oregon. And that's why we are lucky to have and being in this state, and especially Minneapolis is the number 1 urban city in the United States. It's 46.1% that has volunteers. And that's why we are always, I want to advise in when there's a new organization coming, always lean to volunteers. But also remember that volunteers in 2-way streets. Not only they are coming to help us, but also for themselves, helping them. And they have to have a structure where they can come and help, see how they can help us. And I just want to share with you and how we're going to continue the work we are doing right now. And I just wanted to share with you, this is slide that in political science, what they always say is women win at the same rate as men, but they are not running at the same rates. And that's what, since 2013, we are changing to have more women to run for office. One of the problems that women says when they are not running is time. Some of them, they are saying, I don't have time. I don't have time. I'm raising for my kids. The other one is a confidence gap. Even though they want to run for office, most of them, they will tell you when it comes, they will say, no, I don't want to run. And most of them, they will not ask. Most of them, they want someone that already ahead of time, whether in politics or in the community, and community leader ask them, do you want for office? Yeah. In our solution, and we find out in Ayada Leads, and I know many organizations find it's more recruitment. And we're going to do more recruitment since 2013, and we are recruiting more women. As a 501c3 organization, we can continue it and train someone once they said and announce their candidacy. All the work we are doing ahead of time before even that person says, I'm running for office. And that's what we're going to continue doing more in recruitment here in Twin Cities and also in greater Minnesota. And this is our plan this year. Not only in Twin Cities and suburbs, but we are going in greater Minnesota. That's where we have more African diaspora community lives in St. Cloud, in Rochester, in Wilmer. And most of the young people that live in that counties and cities, they want to be part of the political landscape, but they don't have the trainings. And that's why we want more to go those spaces and actually train them. And there's other organizations that already are there that we want to collaborate and actually give them the knowledge and the trainings that we have. And also provide them the institutional knowledge that we accumulated the last 7 or 8 years. Yeah. And I'm going to conclude, and I know most of the people that are here today, they are Mary Pence's staff member, but I thought more grantees, they will be here, but I will advise you to run for office, whether it's in state or level, or whether it's in Congress, in national level, or if you want to even be in a school board and volunteer also. Most of the time, we are not only receiving volunteers in myself and all of our staff at the least with volunteers in our community. And also, and I will ask you please to subscribe in our go on website and email list and see the work we are doing. And we have information that comes every month that we share in our communities. And if you can go and subscribe. And also we would like to ask you, please help us to recruit more women. I know, and most of the grantees that I see in Mary Pence and websites and also networks that I see them. Most of you, I haven't met them, but that's how Mary Pence does. And also, I'm forgetting my names, what I should say. I'm a little bit nervous, sorry about that. But also amplify the work that we are doing and also other grantees. And I wanted to thank you, Mary Pence, and also always amplifying the work we are doing and how your help actually, without you, we would not be in with the work we are doing. Yourself and other few grantees that at the beginning, our work we are doing actually helped us in where we are right now. And we are really thankful. And if you have any questions, now I'm going to open for the questions.
We really appreciate the work you've been doing in the community to get women to participate in politics and just in general civic engagement. It's really amazing what you've done. Mm-hmm. I wonder, are you encountering any resistance among the broader community to what you're doing, or are you seen really favorably?
And Catherine, when you're saying broader community, you mean in our own community or in the large communities?
In the larger community. Actually, both questions.
Yeah, and thank you for asking that question. That's what the work we did back in 2013 and 2014 when we were in informal groups. Actually, what we spent time is to convince our own communities. Women, they used to do and all the work behind the scenes. More men were running for office here in Twin Cities. But what we wanted to convince them that in women, they have the education and the agency to run for office. Most of the women that in that group, 25 people, what they wanted is they wanted in their community and their families to help them. And finally, it took us close to a year and a half to convince our own communities, going to the mosque and saying them women, they are capable to run for office. And then we went back in the large communities. At the beginning, in the first 4 or 5 years, actually, the large communities and funders like you actually helped us, and we didn't have any issues. But now that the political landscape in the United States is changing, and in our state also, that's when we are seeing the pushback saying that we don't want more women of color to run for office. And that's started the last couple of years. It started, and we thought that after the death of George Floyd, our state is going to be more united, but we are seeing that we are more divided than before, unfortunately. And that's why we need more help and more connections with ourselves, grantees and funders. And I know a lot of foundations here in the state of Minnesota are doing that work to help us to continue with the work we started back in 2013.
I'm curious, how do you recruit? When you say recruitment, what is the process you do?
Yeah, we have different ways of process recruitment. And sometimes we go in the community centers. We have a lot of community centers here in Twin Cities in our states. And also it's word of mouth. And if you know, many immigrants here in the United States, what helped us is word of mouth. If someone comes and they take one trainings in our programs, they go and then also share with that training with other people. I know, and as I said earlier, funders also, they amplified our work. They put their social network. That also helped us recruitment. Volunteers that comes in our programs and volunteer also not only help us in fundraising and sharing their times, but also help us recruitment. And that's its cycle. It's not only one time, that's what is ongoing that we are doing every single day and going and making a speech, and myself and my co-workers doing that continuous, but most of them comes in our communities and community centers.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking that question.
Do you have thoughts on that kind of partisanship and divided politics that we have? I do feel sorrow that we've done some backsliding since George Floyd's death. And I think it'll take many years of work, but do you have certain thoughts about that?
No, I know that's the environment that we are. It's not only our state, unfortunately, it's the whole United States that's going through. And I know, and some people are actually in misinformation. And also COVID actually increased that, and I don't have any idea either way, but I know it's, as you said, it's going to take us another 5 or 10 years to overcome and what we did in the last 10 years. And unfortunately, that's what it is. But we have to continue, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Other questions? I just have one more, maybe about volunteers. So about how many volunteers do you have? And I know it takes work to manage volunteers. So you mentioned that, the need of the organization to support the volunteers. How do you do that? Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, it depends on programs. And for example, in future and leaders making the one where we have those cohorts twice or 3 times a year. That's a set volunteers. They come and some of them, they are former cohorts. They're gonna come on volunteers and they leave. But when it comes and as I said, also with recruitment volunteers, we have people that stay with us 3 or 4 years and they continue doing that, volunteers and works. And as I said, it needs a structure. Volunteers, when they are coming to your organization, they don't even want to just volunteer. They want to know how they can volunteer, what they can do for you, what do you need from them. And you have to be ahead of time. Some of them, you have to, it's like hiring someone. And actually having it just work requirement and saying someone actually to supervise them. And sometimes I have, since I oversee the education part of IATA leads, they work with me and I supervise them. And when our executive director that's oversees that political campaigns, volunteers that go under her, she supervises them and she tells them what she needs from them. And some of them, they already left. But when, for example, when we have that Gift Minnesota that every November, some of them, they come back and they do volunteer fundraising for us. And they were saying, I know the work you are doing, we like them, and we're going to do one-time fundraising. And it depends each programs what and how the volunteer, but all of them, they will need supervision and they will need how they can help you. And if you are a small organization, I would always advise you just to see what your capacity is. Not only accept volunteers, but how you can manage those volunteers when they come to your organization. because otherwise you are damaging your reputation. People are going to come and saying, yeah, they put in their website, they saying they're one of volunteers, but they don't have any capacity. And that's what always you have to be careful when you are bringing volunteers to your organization, to be having already structured work they can do and they can help you.
Mm-hmm. I actually thought of one other question. So is it solely the Somali community that is involved? Because I know Minnesota has a rich array of immigrants to our state.
Mm-hmm. No, we have every background of volunteers, but when we are working, for example, we are working about civic engagement programs,
mm-hmm.
and the woman and older women that has language barriers, volunteers that we bring them that is already they have to speak Somali, because that's how they can help mm-hmm. and navigate. But when we have those young people that were born here or maybe grew up, came here as a language and they don't have any language barriers, and that's when we sign up, regardless what background they have and volunteers. It depends which program they are going also.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. If there's more questions, I'll turn it over to Grace.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and for sharing and presenting. So we'll transition the floor over to Institute for Research on Male Supremacism. I believe we have two presenters, right? Alex and Emily. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves and share the screen as you'd like.
Hi, I'm Alex DeBranco. I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for Research on Male Supremacism, and I'm here with my colleague, Emily Carrion, who's our board chair. I'm going to talk for a few minutes about IRMS and its background, and then Emily will present in more depth on our fellowship and other kind of aspects of that program. IRMS was founded in 2019 by Emily and myself and 4 other collaborators who were working within academic research and very dismayed at the lack of attention to the impact of misogyny in culture and society. And so we founded this institution to push back on those issues, to be a place that engages with shaping research, with changing media narratives, with giving advice and training to social justice organizers towards a better understanding of the concept of how cisgender men's dominance and belief in their superiority and erasure of trans and non-binary people and feeling that they are entitled to control the bodies of anyone who is other than cisgender men is the core of our work. And then the intersections of that with white supremacy, with anti-Semitism, with other aspects of prejudices and oppressions that we see play out in society. We've grown a lot in the last 2 years in terms of our fellowship and mentee classes, which Emily will talk more about. We instantly found that there were lots of other people looking for this community, and also for a community that could be supportive. It is, most of us working in this space are women or non-binary or trans, working on movements that are misogynist and therefore hate us in particular. So harassment and digital harassment and doxing are really significant concerns for our community, and also just the emotional toll of being a researcher who spends their day reading misogynist stuff that people are saying. And so we've been able to provide internally this kind of supportive community, while externally also seeing a shift in the kind of language that media are using, and otherwise being able to influence cultural narratives as we grow. we became a Mary's Pence grantee for our pilot summer institute for organizers contesting supremacism last year, where we brought together virtually, since it's still COVID, a group of social justice organizers with researchers looking to connect their research to action, which is the core of our organization's kind of functioning as a think and do tank, and discussed both a better understanding of the heterogeneity of different kinds of supremacist movements that people encounter in their backyards. The people who applied and participated in our program talked about what they were facing in their areas, and we tailored the curriculum accordingly. So things like this Christian right candidate for local office who has been attacking our student GSA also is working with white nationalists. Like, why does that happen? What's going on? And we're like, we know why that happens. It happens a lot. Let us tell you. And so in that kind of process, we were able to begin developing more of our kind of shared understanding and plans this year for more resources to help people understand where these supremacist movements come from. They're often active, in their own communities, the long legacy of organizing with things like the prior presenter recommending running for local office and school boards. School boards have been a really big focus of groups that are seeking to oppose social justice priorities, legacies in terms of keeping content that covers racial justice out of schools, which is back again with critical race theory, attacks on comprehensive sex education, which are usually mixed in with anti-LGBT sentiment. And so we work within all of these kinds of aspects and push media and researchers in other areas to do a better job of the way that they talk about supremacism and recognizing it as something that is at the core of our society and in the mainstream, not just that fringe over there, but really owning where it takes place and how it needs to be dealt with at the roots in places like K through 12, and that the strategies of supremacist and right-wing groups that have focused on K through 12 has been because of their recognition of how powerful it is to influence the next generation. And so we've worked within that space and in doing different kinds of consulting, and we are really excited this year to be revamping some of our programs, and I'm going to pass it over to Emily for that to talk more about one of the core sort of part of how we're made up as a community, our fellowship and mentee programs.
Hey everyone, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as Alex mentioned, my name's Emily Carrion. I'm chair of the board at the IRMS. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about our fellowship program and also our mentorship program, which are two of kind of the core offerings of the Institute. And as Alex mentioned, we've recently redesigned these two programs. And we did that to make them more impactful and more closely aligned with our mission. So that is, to support researchers from diverse backgrounds, to support researchers investigating male supremacism through an intersectional lens. So how does male supremacism, support, and how is it supported by white supremacism, anti-Semitism, xenophobia, anti-trans ideology, right? All of these things. And also to connect research to action, as Alex mentioned. So our fellowship program supports expert researchers in the fields of male supremacism. With this redesign, it's now an 18-month program, and that includes a 6-month orientation to kind of the lens the Institute uses and the research we see as really foundational to that lens. We are in the ends of the process of accepting our new cohort. So we had folks apply, we interviewed them. We're just kind of making final decisions now around the 2022 cohort, and they will start next month. And then our mentorship program supports researchers who are new to studying male supremacism. These are people, across their career stage, but new to this topic. This is a 12-month program, and applications for the 2022 cohort are open, and they close next month, and that cohort will start in July. So I'm just going to say a little bit more about both of these. Right, so the fellowship program we kind of think as having these 5 components. So the first one, and I see as, kind of the most central to the mission that we're trying to do with the fellowship program, that is community. So our fellows are connected with the existing community at the IRMS of researchers who are studying male supremacism and other critical forms of scholarship. So through this community, we offer emotional support. Alex talked about how this research is very difficult to do, especially when you, have an identity that puts you kind of in the crosshairs of some of these groups. So we provide that emotional support. It's also a source of collaboration. So several of our fellows have written together, published together. Alex and I, with another one of our colleagues, Chelsea Eben, just put together an edited volume that many of our fellows contributed to that I think is coming out next month. So that's very exciting. Also, in terms of community, we have a workshop where fellows share their writing, share their research, and we give them feedback. And then there's just kind of the informal community aspect. We have a Slack, things like that. We ask for each other for advice. And it's just really lovely to connect with folks. The second aspect of this program is support. And here I'm talking about kind of the institutional support that we provide to fellows. So as Alex mentioned, doing this research can make you the target of harassment, and especially digital harassment. So our fellows have access to a digital security training, and depending on where they live, if they're in the United States, we can subsidize digital protection services for them to kind of protect their location and things like that. The third aspect is promotion. So we promote fellows' work and their expertise. We do this through our email list, through social media, but also by directing journalists and organizers who are interested in our expertise to different fellows who can, help them or speak to them. The fourth thing is opportunities here. So as Alex mentioned, we have, our training institute on anti-supremacist organizing. We have some, close connections to other nonprofit groups where we advise them on, supremacism. We have the writing group, which I mentioned. We have a reading group. We produce public webinars that go on our YouTube channel. So all of these things are opportunities that fellows can engage in. And the last part of this is commitment. So I just want to mention that, I mentioned it's an 18-month fellowship now with the redesign, and that includes an orientation curriculum. We worked this into the program because we thought it was really important that fellows know where we're coming from, what the foundational research we think is to challenging supremacism, understanding supremacism. And then in addition to that curriculum, fellows also participate in our mentorship program, which I'll talk about next, but they mentor an early career scholar as a fellow. And then we also ask them to participate in at least one of those, initiatives or programming that I mentioned. So that brings us to the mentorship program. And as I mentioned, this is a one-year program, and it's for folks who are new to the field. Again, that could be across any career stage. And I also should mention both the mentorship and fellowship program are open to folks in any industry, right? It does not have to be academia. They could be journalists, they could be independent researchers, organizers, what have you. So the mentorship program are for folks who kind of want to develop skills around studying, researching male supremacism. So the kind of core part of this program is the research support. And so each mentee is paired with one of our fellows in a one-on-one mentoring relationship. And we do those pairings based on, subject matter, discipline, method, anything that kind of the mentee has indicated that they need help with. And then the fellows and mentees work together to develop a research project that mentees are working on over the course of the year. And then also as part of this research support, mentees participate in that workshop that I mentioned, that writing group. So for example, in March, one of our mentees, Yi Bin Wan, is presenting their work, which is very exciting. And then the second part of the mentorship program is, again, that security support that we also offer the fellows around digital security training. How do you protect yourself when you're doing this work online? How do you protect your data? Things like that. And then similar to the fellowship program, a core part of this mentorship program is, again, the community. So mentees are connected to one another. They have that one-on-one relationship with their fellow that they're paired with, but meet other fellows during our social events. And so again, trying to get these emerging researchers keyed into this larger network, and so they feel kind of supported. That is all I wanted to share today. Unfortunately, I have to jump off because I have another meeting somewhere else on campus, which is new to me since I've been working from home the last 2 years. But thank you so much for inviting us here today, and I'm sure Alex can answer your questions.
It's just a question of what is the difference between patriarchal system and what you call
male supremacism?
Male suppression. Thank you. See.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I cut you off.
No, that's the question.
Oh, yeah. So the patriarchal system and the system of male supremacism are the same basic concept. The terminology of male supremacism we decided to work on because, one, people are often dismissive of patriarchy. They'll say something like, oh, it's a patriarchal religion, like that's okay. Not like this is a misogynist belief system. And two, because there's been a lot of work done on white supremacism and to a slightly lesser extent Christian supremacism, and that we wanted to build out a concept of a supremacist ideology in a way that could be understood across intersections. So one of the projects we're actually incubating now is a subcenter on supremacism studies broadly, as a way to kind of help people understand across these intersections instead of having kind of like we deal with white supremacism and patriarchy and anti-Semitism, be able to talk about things in the space of we talk about supremacist ideologies, and everybody knows a supremacist ideology is bad. They understand that from the language. And so the resistance that we encounter is calling something like patriarchy supremacism explicitly. And then in the last couple of years, we've seen more of that openness, and then can talk about systems of cisgendered white men's supremacy and use that terminology in that kind of way. So it's a building on the feminist concepts of patriarchy and bringing it into a terminology that we can use to talk broadly about different forms of supremacist ideology in that kind of terminology, and that recognizes their seriousness.
Emily, my question is, and your research is only for white male and patriarchy, or do you go in communities and different communities in Twin Cities? Your research is just broader male supremacy, or you are also going to see in a different community how they see patriarchy? Because we are also experiencing in our own communities, and I was wondering if your research is part of that larger community, or you just focus the big picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we are, before COVID, our design intention was to be more embedded with the local community in Oakland, which is where we are based out of. And it's part of what we're trying to develop with the summer institutes is more connection to organizers who are working in various communities and in their own kind of backyard. So that's one of the things that we want to expand more in our work. We definitely look at our fellows. Our fellows and mentees are based across mostly North America, Europe, and Australia. I think we have one mentee in Asia and one in South America. We're trying to operate as a global organization and also within communities across the United States. And one of the reasons we work from the framework of also talking about male supremacism is we talk about where its intersections are, like, you know, male supremacism and white supremacism are also often intertwined, but also groups have come to us having trouble understanding groups like the Proud Boys that have men of color in their leadership. And they're like, we have this organizing in our backyard, and we are a collaborative of women and cis and trans women, anti-fascists, and like we're dealing with this in our backyard, and they look a little different because we thought we were facing white nationalists. And so we work with them in Oregon, like, yeah, so like, you know, male supremacism can appeal to men of color, and they change the terminology that they use to make it something where now trans people and women are more in their sights as the enemy. And we've seen a growth in anti-feminist conspiracy theories that are very similar to conspiracy theories that we've seen like against Jewish people in the past. And so we work as an institute and across our fellows who bring you know, expertise in different kind of areas of work to looking at the different kind of ways that male supremacism or patriarchy manifests and what those similarities are across. There's a lot of collaboration with men's rights groups in the US, with fathers' rights groups, so-called, in India. And they, in India, it's focused on oppositions to laws that crack down on dowry abuse. But the rhetoric that they use about women making false allegations is the same as the rhetoric that we see here about our laws around sexual violence and Title IX in campuses. And so we try to work in these perspectives, and we try to also respond to people who join our training institute or reach out to us and ask for consulting and advice, that we tailor and provide what experience we can based on what's going to be most helpful.
I have a question, Alex. First, I just want to say I really enjoyed the presentation. I was really excited to hear about the program that you have. I was wondering if you could speak more about, I do want to reach out, you know, offline and contact you guys to talk about if perhaps our group at Cold Spring Harbor, what we try to do is we try to equip our trainees in our campus community with the knowledge about like data-driven evidence about this topic and how it impacts scientists. So remember, scientists who identify as LGBTQ+ and also as women. But there's this dangerous thought that science is kind of, excluded from this or kind of immune to this because the scientists are supposed to be objective. But in fact, this is completely wrong and it's embedded in culture. And the problem that we have is we often don't know who to go to get external expertise on these social issues. And we often just rely on recruiting other scientists who have a passion for this, but no formal, support in being trained in this. So is it in the plans of your institute to do kind of like single session workshops, or is your group considering about doing this beyond just like your mentoring and fellowship programs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when we start our fellow program back up, we usually offer webinars on different topics regularly. And then also we respond to requests for people dealing with specific things. So we had a request from the Utah chapter of the American Association for University Women last year that Emily and another fellow, Nicole Bedera, spoke to them because they offer grants for usually non-traditional women students. They provide a scholarship, and the university, in response to organizing by men's rights activists, said we're doing away with gender as like a marker for who the scholarships go to. Like, you can give us your money and we'll give it to who we feel like. You have no say over it. And so this, this use of that men's rights activists like to use, and that I think we kind of see in the sciences when you try to broach the concept of like gender inequality, that like by doing things to support women, you are somehow being sexist because it doesn't recognize the structure of supremacism that is embedded within it. So we do consultations pro bono if the organization is a small organization, and if it's like TikTok, who I have spoken to, we make them pay a lot of money around specific kind of topics, and would be happy to talk to your group and to other groups about when you're facing particular challenges like that on campuses, and figure out resources that we can develop.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
I take for granted that I don't have to think about digital security, but I was recently made aware that a different grantee had an issue and then got some support to address that issue. But Aban, have you had any issues at IATA Leeds around digital security? Because there could very well be white supremacist males in this community that don't like what you're doing.
No, Catherine, we haven't seen it yet, but I know in the grantee calls Protas, maybe you know them. They are located in Washington, D.C. They are one of the funders in our program the last 2 years, but they reached out to us 3 months ago, and they said they have a grant to train all our organizations about cyber security, and that's actually, we are going to accept that, but that's what many foundations they are seeing and they are providing, and we are really grateful. Yeah, but that's like, I've seen it more people, they are actually being ready because they don't know what's going to happen the next couple of years, when especially organizations that like us and other organizations that serve only women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe I'm pronouncing their name is Protas or Protos. Maybe you know them, I guess.
I'm not sure if I know them.
Yeah, I'll send you their names. Yeah, but they are giving that grant. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the Proteus Fund.
Proteus, yeah, exactly. That's, yeah. They were funded the last couple of years. It's our civic leadership programs, but they said now they have this program, especially organizations, the woman-run organizations, to be ready for and training for cyber attacks.
Yeah, especially women of color.
Yeah,
I think.
Just another question, Alex. If someone wants to enroll in the programs, like one of the mentoring, what are the things you ask from besides the commitment? No?
In terms of the application process?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're accepting mentee applications right now, which I think Mary's Pence has tweeted our call as well. For the mentee application, we ask for a cover letter, basically and a research statement saying what the research project you want to pursue is over the course of your year as a mentee. And then for the Summer Training Institute, which is actually, I shouldn't call it the Summer Training Institute because we might actually do it in the fall this year because people were like, I'm on vacation in August, but I really want to do this program. So the Training Institute, when we do that application, we have like a form with a series of questions where we ask where you're based, what the issues are that like you and or your organization are facing in terms of supremacists, what the things you're looking to learn are. So they're usually designed around most of our applications are designed around short answer forms, and then the fellowship and mentee parts of them also have, we require research samples because that's kind of the design of those aspects.
If we want to look for some of your research, where do we go?
Yeah, our website is theirms.org. It's also malesupremacism.org, also goes to us. And so we have some of our research, and we also have an email list that you can join. And the email list is where we send out when we're accepting new mentees or interns or have the Training Institute or conferences or webinars or all that kind of stuff goes out on our email list.
Yeah. Okay. So I can send you my email and you can put me in your list.
Yeah, I can add you onto our list.
Okay. Thank you. I am interested in the topic. Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
So I've added both websites to the chat if you want to click those links and follow through there. That's one way. And then I'll do a definite follow-up email on some other information. But are there any additional questions that we have in this group?
I wondered a little bit about the kind of the activists that went through the Summer Institute, and how do they take and apply their learnings from this? So what would be some typical things people considered? And also, how could I, as not somebody involved in a specific movement, use what the research says?
Yeah, so a lot of our kind of work in the Pilot Institute, we did basically 3 topics. The first topic was kind of an overview of the different types of intersections of supremacist organizations. So we found that, and what I talked about before, like the Proud Boys and groups that are supremacist, but also multiracial, and how they deploy that, being one of the most effective things that we talk about with groups for them to take back to their organizing. Because what happens is they write a letter to the editor and they say this is a white nationalist group, and the group says, we have men of color, we're not white nationalists, which is probably true. There's still usually actually white supremacist groups at their core. Something like the Proud Boys requires in your pledge that you say that there's no such thing as structural racism, and the United States is an equal place. So you have to buy into the white supremacist framework even as a man of color. But there's a lot of ways in which sort of the social justice groups sometimes have a tendency to see the other side as homogenous, and they see us the same way. But then it can become easy to use excuses well, we're not white nationalists. We're okay, true, but you're male supremacist. And so the change of sort of language is one of them. The second session we had in that one was focused on digital organizing and security. because people had asked about that. So kind of protections. And then the third one we did with more mix of researchers and activists on ideas that they could take back. And so some of the things that we have in the plans to work on, a number of people asked for like one-pagers that they could use. Some people who are more creative were interested in collaborating on zines as another way of getting the research out. One of our speakers who is actually had come to a presentation of mine and was like the original inspiration for the Institute. She, when they have done organizing, like they've done a lot of creative techniques when supremacist groups were coming into town. They've done like sponsor a Proud Boy, where like for every Proud Boy that shows up, you pledge $1 that goes to a social justice organization that they would hate. They've done queer dance party, they've done banana suits, and realizing things like, you know, a lot of these groups, part of their kind of masculinist authoritarian perspective is that they like things like getting into fights. It's, you know, good for their branding. Pictures of them trying to be serious while someone runs around in a banana suit in their picture, less good for their branding. Being met with like an explosion of like queer dance party and like joy and happiness, their presence going to like actually give money to something else, like those have been effective creative techniques. And so sharing those with these groups, and then our hope over the course of this year, because we actually from Mary's Pence have a grant for general operating expenses this year. And we also, I told Grace recently, we're able to leverage that grant with a private donor to give us a grant of the same size so that we can bring on some part-time staff support. And so we're actually looking forward this year for activists we've talked to and media who we've presented at their newsrooms doing more of these one-pagers and things. So people have kind of brought that back into shifting their organizing to understanding what they're facing. We've worked with comprehensive sex education. There's a new lobbying group that we're working with. That is a place to like change humanization. And so working across kind of different areas and trying to bring different ways of thinking about how we can intervene in supremacist organizing.
Very good. I like those nonviolent intervention kind of activities that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? I know we're scheduled to 2:30, but by all means, we'll probably cut it a bit shorter just due to our third presenter not being available. Hope that they're getting well. But we want to thank you once again so much, Vivian, Alex. I know Emily already jumped off, for sharing more about your orgs and the work you're doing, the change you're making in your spaces. And I definitely see some connections to happen with other grantees that are also, you know, on this call, and I can do those follow-ups for you all. But are there any last thoughts or questions from anyone before I kind of share a little bit about some of the future sessions we're going to be offering? Yeah, so be on the lookout. In March, we're going to be hosting one that's focused on grant writing. So we're actually partnering with Funders for Justice and Mortenson's Family Foundation, where we'll be kind of doing some interactive discussion on grant writing, how to really cultivate and present your story, and kind of the insight from the funder side when you're looking at applications to consider applying for. And then in March also, we're going to have those cohorts. I thank you all for responding to my grant form. I mean, not grant form, but Google form, sharing availabilities, and we'll get those scheduled out to start with nonprofit management, as well as public policy and engagement. And then in April, we'll be working with Evan Johnson, who's a photographer, professional videographer, who's done it for countless nonprofits as well as in the community and in educational realm. But we'll be focusing on kind of that picture capturing. How do you capture your org? How do you get the visuals that you want to use either in future funding opportunities or even for yourself, just as to present with and carry on to show the story in another way of what you guys all do in your organizations, what you all do in your orgs. But that will all be via email. Catherine, is there anything you'd like to share prior to us closing out here?
Well, I think you did well. Maybe just around the photography workshop, I know it's really hard for a lot of grantees to think about how you can capture a picture that really tells your story, but it's really, really useful to your organizations and to Mary's Pence to promote your work. So if you have any interest in that, I'd encourage you to join that group. And it doesn't have to be you as part of your organization. It might be somebody who usually whips out their camera at events or whatever, who might be most interested in that. But I hope the conversation will identify some creative ways to show your story, because a lot of times it is office space, or a lot of times it is Zoom calls, but they're very, very important stories to tell. So consider finding the right person in your organization to participate with that. Okay. And again, I'm grateful for the work you're doing out in your communities, and I'm grateful that you could spend time with us today.